So this is part 2 of the video about the Great Leap Forward. As I said earlier, it's suitable for paper 2 for IBDP History students. Probably not detailed enough for paper 3, but a start. So not surprisingly, the results are beyond catastrophic for pretty much everybody involved. At the Lushan conference in 1959, Pang Duhuai had tried to speak up against the consequences of the Great Leap Forward, what was happening in the Chinese countryside. As a result, he's sidelined from the party, and pretty much that's the end of his kind of political career as a result of that. Other key leaders, Liu Shaoqi and Zhou Enlai, also opposed to it, but in the end it's Mao's faction that kind of takes control of the Lushan conference. Production targets are not decreased, and disaster is piled upon disaster as a result of the Great Leap Forward. Plenty of the textbooks and readings will cover this in lots and lots of detail. Backyard furnaces are disasters, and of course many families left even without the cooking pot to carry on with, so a real disaster in that sense there. Poor quality goods, the steel produced in the backyard furnaces is absolutely useless, and again that political control and meddling goes on and on and on. And it's not just really in the industry that mismanagement, it's also in agriculture as well, particularly when it comes to deforestation. The adjustments that are then consequenting to the water tables will lead to disastrous for particularly the southern farmers and their rice planting. So really everything's going wrong for everybody. By chance, there's a good harvest in 1958, largely because of good weather, but that does not continue. And again, we see inflation of results causing huge problems, and it means that unrealistic targets are produced. So this is a constant theme across the Great Leap Forward, and if you watch the video from China, A Century of Revolution, you'll be very clear on that by inflating the targets, and then by local and provincial groups lying about how much they produce, the party's central planning office demands more and more. They're under the impression, they're under the illusion created by provincial party managers that the production is much more successful than it actually is. So a disaster in the making. There are very different estimations about the number of people that died during the Chinese famine that was created. It's the worst famine in history, and clearly man-made. Chinese peasants were restricted from travelling to the countryside to beg, from the countryside to beg in towns and cities. So there's little idea, of course, heavily censored by the government at the time. It's only in recent years in China that this discussion's really opened up, and certainly Chinese historians are getting to grips with the issues, but figures do range quite wildly, and it's definitely worth having a look at some of the different historians and collecting together how they've collected those data. But regardless of the numbers, the specific numbers, it is truly a horrendous result of the Great Leap Forward. Mao really has no choice. He can't disassociate himself with this disaster, but he does remain chairman of the party, and as a result will retain heavy influence over the media and also the Chinese army. But many of his colleagues, as Jack Gray points out, kind of choose to see this as the beginning of his retirement, but it's not quite. Zhou Enlai and Liu Shaoqi will begin to take over the financial management of China at this time. Margaret Morecambe, in her brilliant collection of source material called China in Revolution and the Spirit of Change, has a whole heap of sources about the impact of the Great Leap Forward, and certainly if you can get hold of those, that would be really useful. If not, any IB textbook will have a collection of information about the impact of the Great Leap Forward. And I think for always the question is this relationship between the development of communism and economic development. When we're looking at the consequences and impact of the Great Leap Forward, do try and think about it in terms of the political considerations, the political ideas to do with central or decentralized planning, to do with control of the party, to do with mass participation, as well as the economic development, what is being produced and the quality of that is being produced. So that's a good question to have a little think about. So hopefully this has been helpful, and thanks for watching.